This is a CBS News special report. I'm Jessi Mitchell in New York. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping are about to take part in a high-stakes summit. You can see an arrival ceremony is underway at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. This is the first time a U.S. president has been to China since Trump's last trip there in 2017 during his first term. Trade is expected to be the major topic for both presidents, but the war with Iran, energy, Taiwan relations, and tariffs are also inescapable discussions. CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Zhang is covering the pivotal visit, joins us live now from Beijing. Weijia, the leaders have a lot to talk about over the next couple of days. It's starting out with friendly smiles and handshakes. There's President Trump right there. Let's take a look at them now, greeting each other, very friendly. What's President Trump's biggest goal for the summit, Weijia?
Well, really for both leaders, this is an opportunity to signal stability in their relationship, to show the world that even though there is competition between the U.S. and China, it is not escalating to confrontation. And of course, as you mentioned, as we are watching right now, there is so much ceremony to this 2-day visit and pomp and circumstance to really literally roll out the red carpet for President Trump, as you are seeing right now. And that is important for the Chinese to really show that this is an important relationship that they value and that they want to keep expanding on despite the differences that they have. Of course, President Trump has made very clear that one of his main focuses is bringing home new deals when it comes to technology, business, and certainly trade deals. You might remember the last time these two world leaders met back in October, they actually reached a truce that halted a trade deal that was fierce and continued to escalate. And so there could be more on the table there. We know that China is looking for more tariffs relief. And, you know, along with that, there are so many other issues that these two men have to talk about as they greet each other for the first time during this visit, as well as other members of both delegations.
Some of this trade war between the two has cooled a little bit, but now things are flaring back up with everything else happening in the world. President Trump campaigned on his America First movement, aiming to boost domestic manufacturing and reduce dependence on China. And since taking office, as you mentioned, the president has also imposed several tariffs on Chinese imports, some of which have been stricken down as illegal. But how has that stance taken a toll on the relations between these two nations?
Well, there certainly was tension, but as we already talked about, there was also a reduction in that tension last October, especially after China agreed to certain things like purchasing more American soybeans. We do anticipate even more deals being announced this time around with regard to buying soybeans, American beef, and even Boeing jets. And so it is always going to be the backdrop to your point, because the president's belief to use pressure points is something that, will continue throughout his presidency as he shapes his foreign policy. But certainly he wants to rely on China less, especially with regard to rare earth minerals that are critical for all things having to do with technology and every sector, really. So it is a very difficult dance for them to make, but of course it is in both of their best interests to maintain a healthy, robust, working relationship, because these two huge world economies are so intertwined that, frankly, these countries, these two leaders, need each other to succeed.
You talk about the soybeans, the beef, the jets from America. All of these things are being impacted right now with the chokehold on fuel and fertilizer in the Strait of Hormuz. So let's talk about the global impact of the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran. That's an inevitable point of discussion. China buys more Iranian oil than any other country, and that's been bottled up in the Persian Gulf with the ongoing dueling blockades on the Strait. So how can China position itself to help find a conclusion to this conflict?
I think, Jessi, if you don't mind, we should just watch some of this ceremony first. This is the first time that these two leaders are meeting on this very high-stakes summit. And yes, Iran will be a huge topic of conversation, but it's also important to take in the ceremony that the Chinese have laid out here, because it's a huge sign of respect that they feel is very important to bestow upon President Trump here at the Great Hall, which is an incredibly significant place for the Chinese. It's right next to Tiananmen Square, and it is the home of full sessions for China's legislature, the National People's Congress, as well as the National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. It is quite significant in Chinese history as well. In the 1940s, Mao Zedong pledged that once the revolution succeeded, he would build a conference hall for 10,000 where the CCP and the people could gather to discuss important issues. And that was eventually built inside the Great Hall. And so I think it's important just to recognize the fact that this is the first time a sitting president from the U.S. has come to this country in nearly a decade. Of course, President Joe Biden never came during his tenure as president. It was President Trump during his first term in 2017 who came here to also meet with Xi Jinping, and the two leaders also came here to the Great Hall. But I think we can take a listen now to some of this ceremony that is welcoming the American president.
Watching President Trump and President Xi walking the red carpet outside the People's Hall in Beijing, being greeted by all of the different military members. It's part of the pomp and circumstance Weijia was just describing there. China's finest on display. You see those kids there have American flags that they're waving and cheering for President Trump, who obviously enjoying that moment, clapping for their cheers. And we saw children greeting President Trump from his plane as well as he landed with American flags to help greet him, along with the Chinese flag and lots of flowers. Leaders are completing their walk around the grand entrance to the Great Hall. Weijia, walk us through what we've seen so far.
Well, you can see that these two world leaders have taken a walk around the Great Hall. And as you mentioned, there's so much pomp and circumstance welcoming him that really started from the moment he touched down in China. And so right now we're seeing a real projection for the world to see these two leaders together, as I mentioned earlier, to show that they are in fact engaged in an important relationship that they both acknowledge. And of course, there's much to discuss, even though this visit will only be about a day and a half. There is so much on the agenda, and so it's important to set the stage, to set the tone for their meetings, and also to welcome the president. Obviously, we just saw dozens of school-aged children cheering for President Trump, and it is something that he clearly enjoyed.
And here come some more marching troops. Let's watch them. See the precision China would love for the world to see, and the military might with the troops and the band greeting President Trump, as Presidents Trump and Xi are sure to talk about many things at this summit. Wei Zhejiang is there covering it all, and it appears the presidents are about to take their official photo before heading into their first set of bilateral talks. So, Weijia, let's go back to what they're going to be talking about here when they go inside. How is China positioning itself as an ally of kind of everybody in the middle of what's going on with the global conflicts right now?
Well, China is Iran's biggest customer when it comes to Iranian oil. And so, of course, we expect President Trump to raise this issue because it is in China's best interest to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and to help mediate that. At the same time, right before President Trump came here to China, he said he didn't think the U.S. needed any help with the stalled peace talks in Iran. So it's unclear to what extent he will be asking Xi Jinping directly for any help to try to pressure Iran to come back to the negotiating table and to at least reopen the strait, because it impacts, of course, the global supply, the global economy here and around the world, certainly at home, as we have been reporting extensively. And so, China hasn't really wanted to take a front seat as it relates to mediating this. Like many countries, they do not believe they are directly involved or do not want to be directly involved. So that would be a big ask of President Trump, but certainly something we expect, especially because in recent days, the U.S. has placed more sanctions on China with regard to Iran's oil refineries. So that is just one topic sure to come up. As for the Chinese, it is incredibly important for Xi Jinping to continue the dialogue about Taiwan. And that is an uncomfortable place for the president because the U.S. policy on Taiwan has not changed. But China would certainly like the U.S. to support it less and to offer less in arms sales, as one example. So those are two sticky topics that, they will have to address. But they have a lot more on the agenda as well. Everything from trade to business, as we talked about earlier. So, it's going to be a very jam-packed session today and another bilateral meeting tomorrow.
All of that as our Congress is considering billions of dollars in funding for weapons for Taiwan. Weijia Zhang, thank you so much for being there. We know you will watch every moment that you can as Presidents Xi and Trump head into their first sit-down session of the summit for about an hour and a half of bilateral talks. Weijia will be watching and waiting for any announcements. Senior White House correspondent Weijia Zhang, thank you for being with us and for being there on the ground in Beijing. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and later on CBS Mornings. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Jessi Mitchell in New York.